Hey guys, tonight we're going to drop you right into the squishy, smelly center of medieval life, because let's face it, you probably wouldn't last a single day in this world of wooden shoes, mystery meat, and suspicious puddles. Picture this, you open your eyes to a dim, smoky room, the thatched roof just above your head, and someone's very bony foot practically in your face. The fire in the center of the room has long since gone out, the coals a dull gray. You're on a straw mattress shared with at least two other family members, one of whom is snoring with the theatrical flair of a bagpipe. And, oh yes, there's a faint but unmistakable smell of something that might have once been cheese, or might just be your cousin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a place that's hopefully more hygienic, drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in a cottage that looks quaint from the outside but is a sensory roller coaster on the inside. There's a layer of dirt on the floor thick enough to plant carrots in, and the walls are coated in soot from 1,000 smoky evenings. A piglet nudges at your foot. You don't own it, it just wandered in, probably because the door doesn't close properly. But you're too tired to care. You pull your blanket, made of rough wool and disappointment, up around your shoulders, trying to avoid eye contact with the chicken sleeping on the windowsill. Privacy isn't a thing here. Your entire family, parents, siblings, maybe even a cousin or two, shares one room. The wealthier folk might have partitions, but you've got a corner. A damp one. Maybe even a pot in it for nighttime emergencies. Because no, there's no bathroom. You stumble outside into the morning mist, and that's your toilet, wherever looks, least muddy. The air smells of smoke, manure, and unwashed humanity. Somewhere nearby, someone's already shouting about stolen firewood. You scratch at your leg, it's the wool trousers, not fleas. Probably. Historians still argue whether medieval people were truly nose-blind to their own stench, or just incredibly polite. Outside, the streets are more like trenches. No pavement, just muck churned up by hooves, boots, and the occasional cart. A stream of murky water, probably mixed with all kinds of bodily waste, trickles down the center. That's also where people throw their chamber pot contents, so, watch your step. One wrong move and you're literally knee-deep in Tuesday's stew. You pass a few neighbors. One is already drunk. It's 6 a.m. The other is coughing into a rag and mumbling about bad humors. You offer a polite grunt, though you're mostly trying to breathe through your mouth. The smells shift, burning peat, old ale, and something sour that might be coming from the butcher's shack. A dog runs by with what looks suspiciously like a ham in its mouth. Children dart through the alleyways barefoot, screaming gleefully, one of them brandishing a stick as if it were Excalibur. You step around them, heading for the well. Water has to be fetched, and it's your turn. But before you can get there, someone opens their window and dumps a bucket of waste out onto the road. It misses you by about 2 feet. You mutter something unholy under your breath, which is bold of you, considering the church bell is already tolling and you're probably late. In the distance, a rooster crows like it's auditioning for a rock band. Somewhere else, a pig squeals. The sounds of daily life, if your daily life includes the ever-present threat of tetanus. A breeze carries the scent of bread from the baker's oven. Your stomach growls, remembering last night's meal of boiled turnips and despair. As you reach the well, you see old Mare from 3 cottages down. She's got a wooden ladle tied to her belt and tells you, yet again, that the new midwife is a witch. She saw her talking to a black cat. You nod, because you've learned the hard way that arguing with old Mare means she'll follow you for 2 hours, reciting every curse she knows. Quirky tidbit time, some medieval folk believed cats were demons in disguise. Others thought sleeping too close to a dog could transfer your dreams. So, maybe keep your pet relationships professional. You hoist a bucket of water, wincing as the rope burns your palms. You spill some on your tunic, which doesn't matter because it's already damp from the morning fog and last night's questionable leak from the thatch. That roof, by the way, is a breeding ground for mites and sometimes mold, and if it collapses in heavy rain, you just stuff it with more straw and hope for the best. On the way back to your hut, you glance toward the manor house, the only place in town with actual glass windows. Real ones, not oiled parchment. They sparkle in the morning sun like tiny lies. You've never been inside, of course. Most people haven't. But the gossip says they have chairs with backs and maybe even spoons made of metal. You're jolted out of your noble house daydream by the squawk of a chicken underfoot. You've stepped on its tail feathers. It glares at you as if it's about to press charges. Inside again, the hearth is smoking unevenly. The kindling's damp, and your sister is poking it with a stick like it owes her money. Someone's already dipping crusts of stale bread into a communal bowl of morning gruel. It's brownish-gray, lumpy, and smells faintly like yesterday's dinner. You grab a piece and dunk it without asking questions. You chew slowly. Very slowly. And try not to think about the tiny crunch you just felt. Maybe it was barley. Maybe it was something else. You don't look too closely. Hunger makes you brave. And as you sit in your drafty home, gnawing on your questionable breakfast, one thing becomes painfully clear: this isn't the fun, fairy tale medieval world of knights and dragons. This is the version where people get excited about bread with fewer bugs in it. You're still chewing the last of that chewy, questionably crunchy gruel when someone yells that the pigs have gotten into the cabbage again. You pretend not to hear it. It's not your problem until someone points directly at you and says it is. Which they do. With a particularly muddy finger. So out you go again, wiping crumbs off your tunic and muttering to yourself. The morning sun is barely up, but your day's been going for hours. Because breakfast in medieval times isn't exactly a leisurely affair with oat milk lattes and avocado toast. No, your menu is whatever survived the night, mostly yesterday's barley pottage reheated over embers, if you're lucky, or dry crusts dipped in ale if you're not. And yes, ale for breakfast isn't just a medieval myth. The water is so unreliable that even kids are sipping low-alcohol beer just to avoid dysentery. So bottoms up, champ. This morning, it's pottage again, a thin porridge of grains and whatever greens haven't wilted or been stolen by goats. It tastes exactly like the damp wood it was stirred with and carries a special surprise: weevils. You don't even blink anymore when you see them. You scoop around them politely, pretending you're the kind of person who has choices. You're not. There's a rat watching you from a rafter. It's unusually confident. Some say medieval rats were bolder, adapted to humans and just as entitled to your food as you are. Historians still argue whether rodent overpopulation in towns contributed more to food scarcity or disease outbreaks, but either way, that rat is giving you the side eye. You push the bowl away and sigh. The fire's low, the air is thick with smoke, and someone is already asking when you'll be refilling the water pail. Again. Your life is a never-ending list of unpleasant errands punctuated by hunger pangs and minor injuries. You shuffle outside and see your neighbor, Ellis, attempting to chase a chicken off his porch with a broom. He's not winning. The chicken looks smug. You exchange nods like fellow survivors. He lifts a hand and mutters, "Rain smells weird today." That's not a joke. People here genuinely believe smells can predict the weather, moods, or even illness. A sour whiff might mean a storm, or that the tanner's working overtime again. Now here's a fringe fact to chew on while you chew more barley. Some medieval folks believed that bread that didn't rise properly had spiritual issues, and a misshapen loaf might even be considered unlucky. So not only is your breakfast dry and sad, it might be cursed. Fantastic. You wander toward the commons where some of the more ambitious villagers are digging in the shared garden patch. Not for fun. This is survival gardening: turnips, onions, leeks. Root vegetables are your real MVPs, since they store decently and don't require sorcery to grow. You nod at a woman cradling an entire sack of parsnips like it's her firstborn. That's the kind of energy you respect. There's talk of a feast day coming up. That means fasting. Yes, feasting means fasting. Welcome to the confusing logic of medieval religious calendars. You don't get more food. You get less. Because piety and stomachs, apparently, were very close to souls. You sneak a glance at the baker's hut. It smells amazing, warm, crusty loaves with maybe, just maybe, a hint of honey or leftover animal fat. You'll never afford those. Those are for the clergy or the Reeves family. You, meanwhile, are stuck bartering for stale ends from yesterday's batch. The baker's son sees you looking and waves a tiny wedge of bread in the air like a cruel magician. You walk away. You pass a group of kids playing, kicking the bladder. That's not a metaphor. They're literally booting around a dried pig's bladder filled with air, having the time of their lives. No iPads, no screens, just the unholy sound of squelch every time it hits the ground. It's kind of gross. It's also the closest thing to a soccer match you're likely to see. Your stomach growls again. It's not just breakfast, there's no guarantee of lunch or dinner, either. Meals are about availability, not routine. You might get 2 in a day, or none, depending on the season, your luck, and whether your goat wandered off again. Remember your goat? She's still missing. You duck inside your hut again and grab a small lump of hard cheese. Very hard. Like, weapon-grade hard. You gnaw at it like a determined rodent, chipping off small flakes. It's salty and sharp and definitely from last month, but it's better than nothing. A fly tries to land on it, and you do not share. That cheese? Probably made from sheep or goat's milk, curdled with rennet scraped from a calf's stomach. Delicious and slightly unsettling. But you eat it anyway. A sudden clatter comes from the alley. Someone's dropped a wooden plate, cracked in two. Ceramic is rare, expensive, and fragile. Most dishes are wood or pewter, and forks. Not invented for another few hundred years in most places. You eat with your hands, maybe a spoon if you're lucky, and if you're really high class, a knife. But you'd better bring your own. Hosts rarely provide cutlery. Someone offers you a small apple, wrinkled, bruised, and wormy on one side. You take it, cut away the bad bit, and eat the rest. It's sour, but it's fruit, and that's practically dessert. Speaking of sweets, they're almost mythical in your world. Honey is precious, sugar is rarer than dragons, and the average peasant's idea of a treat might be roasted chestnuts or a bit of berry mash. Anything nicer is for the nobility, people with clean hands and better shoes. You end the morning with a final sip of small ale. It's weak, flat, and warm. But it won't make you sick, and it dulls the ache in your empty belly just enough to keep moving. You step out again, brushing crumbs from your tunic, and sigh as you look around. There's mud everywhere. Someone's yelling about a missing goat. Might be yours. Again. And someone else is vomiting behind the mill house. Breakfast is officially over. Welcome to your day. You're halfway down the muddy lane when a sharp pebble wedges itself perfectly in the worn seam of your boot. You limp, curse under your breath, and consider whether it's even worth removing, because let's be honest, everything hurts already. Your feet are damp, your stomach is still rumbling from that grain glue breakfast, and now you've got to navigate through the true marvel of medieval society, a village with no plumbing, no trash collection, and absolutely no shame. Welcome to sanitation, medieval style, where the smell is as persistent as the rats and personal hygiene is optional at best. You pass a row of crooked homes with overhanging upper floors, and from one of them, a chamber pot is being emptied directly onto the street. It splashes down with a dramatic plop, and you make the rookie mistake of glancing upward. Big mistake. That was dangerously close to your face. Some folks will yell, "Gardelot," before tossing waste from windows, a polite, French-tinged heads-up that something awful is about to happen. Others won't. You begin walking closer to walls, hugging the sides, trying to avoid the path where most of the liquid nightmares land. The irony? That's the same part of the road where pigs and chickens like to trot around. So you're choosing between wastewater or hoof-mashed mud and feathers. A true medieval choose-your-own-adventure. As you hobble along, you pass the tanner's hut, one of the worst-smelling places in town. And that's saying something. Tanners work with animal hides, soaking them in a mixture that includes water, lime, and, wait for it, dog urine. And sometimes pigeon poop. It softens the skin. And it absolutely wrecks your nose. The entire hut smells like someone boiled shoes in vinegar. The tanner, known as Old Clem, nods at you like nothing's amiss. His hands are permanently stained a yellow-brown color, and you're fairly certain he hasn't blinked since last harvest. You offer a tight-lipped smile and pick up your pace. A young boy runs past you, pants halfway down, giggling as he squats beside a bush. You avert your eyes. That's the bathroom situation. There are no toilets, no outhouses for most villagers, just whichever bush, ditch, or corner is available and unoccupied. Behind every barn and under every hedgerow lurks someone regretting their diet. Historians still argue whether medieval people cared much about the smells, or whether they just tuned it out, like we do with traffic noise. But one thing's certain, you'll never complain about public restrooms again. Even the ones with broken hand dryers. Let's talk about your teeth for a second. Because you feel a dull, throbbing ache in your molar. That's new. Or maybe it's been there for a while, and you just stopped noticing. Toothaches were a medieval nightmare, especially because dentistry involved pliers and prayer, in that order. If a tooth hurt badly enough, it would be yanked out by the village barber, who also cuts hair, lets blood, and probably dabbles in minor exorcisms. You're not in a rush to meet him. Instead, you bite gingerly on the left side and whisper a short plea to Saint Apollonia, patron saint of toothaches. Because yes, there's a saint for that. And if the pain spreads, well, you'll just soak your face in ale and hope it goes away. A bit further on, you see someone squatting by the roadside, rubbing their legs with what looks like ashes and herbs. That's Marjorie, the local wise woman. She swears her concoctions keep fleas away. You're not sure. You still itch. But you've seen worse. Some folks rub goose fat on their scalps or stuff lavender in their hats to ward off lice. It rarely works. Now, your clothes. They haven't been washed in a while. No one's has. Washing requires hauling water, boiling it, scrubbing with harsh ash-based soaps, and then waiting days for it all to dry, assuming the weather cooperates. Spoiler, it doesn't. So most folks just layer more garments and pretend everything's fine. And that's why your tunic has developed its own ecosystem. It clings to you like a damp curtain and smells faintly of wet wool, onions, and shame. You notice a stain you don't recognize and decide not to investigate. Some mysteries should remain unsolved. As you near the edge of the village, you hear raised voices. Two men are arguing near a public latrine, a rough wooden shed built over a trench, shared by way too many people and cleaned far too rarely. You can smell it before you see it. And you can hear the flies. You step wide, giving the whole structure a respectful berth. You've also noticed the town stream, a muddy ribbon of brown-green water, doubles as a laundry spot, bathing location, and drinking source for those who haven't yet succumbed to waterborne illnesses. You crouch to fill your jug and think better of it. A dead frog floats slowly by. There's always that one cheerful local who swears the water is strong for the stomach. You've met him. He also insists that washing too often weakens the body. That's actually a fairly common belief. Some medieval people thought bathing opened your pores to evil humors or unclean spirits. Cleanliness wasn't next to godliness, it was closer to madness. Still, noble households sometimes had large wooden tubs for bathing, and hot baths were enjoyed in cities, if you were rich, male, or visiting a bathhouse that occasionally doubled as a brothel. For you, a peasant? Bathing is reserved for special occasions. Maybe Easter. Maybe your funeral. And your hair. You run a hand through it, grimacing. There's something crunchy. Not a good sign. Most folks keep it tied up, hidden under a linen coif or cap. Hats are useful, they hide the lice. Some swear by vinegar rinses or rosemary steeped in ale, but again, water is precious. You start to think maybe Marjorie's ash-rubbing idea wasn't so crazy. Passing the farriers, you catch the sharp tang of hot iron and burning hoof. Horses are being shoed, hoofs scraped and filed. The scent is oddly satisfying, in a, well at least it's not manure, kind of way. You make a mental note to find herbs for your tooth later. Or maybe steal a bit of strong cider to numb it. Anything but going to the barber. And so you walk on, smelling faintly of sheep, wishing you had a spoon, and still trying not to step in anything worse than you already have. You're trudging past the smithy when a blast of heat hits you like a wall. Sparks fly from the open doorway, and inside, the blacksmith is pounding red-hot iron like it insulted his mother. The hammer clangs rhythmically, metal against anvil, over and over. It's oddly hypnotic, though the smell of scorched hair and sweat brings you right back to reality. The smith doesn't look up. His arms are thick as logs, his face smeared with soot, and every blow of the hammer says, "Don't mess with me." You nod politely and keep walking. You need something today. Not from him, he's terrifying, but from your own trade, whatever that might be. Because everyone, even you, has a job to do in this world. And no one cares if your tooth hurts or if your breakfast tasted like damp hay. Work keeps the village alive, and idleness. That'll get you shamed, punished, or simply ignored into starvation. So what do you do? Well, let's say you're a weaver. That's your lot. You've got a loom back home the size of a grown man, and you spend your days feeding it wool like a beast with a never-ending appetite. The wool comes from your neighbor's sheep, and it's been carded, combed, and spun until it's finally ready to be woven into something vaguely tunic-shaped. The process is tedious, slow, and hard on your hands. But hey, at least it keeps you inside when it rains. You arrive at your small, smoky workshop and stare at the tangled warp threads you didn't finish yesterday. They're mocking you. You sit down, take a deep breath, and start passing the shuttle back and forth. The rhythm of it is comforting. Back and forth. Back and forth. Your hands move without thinking, muscle memory guiding you. You could do this blindfolded. Honestly, some days you practically do. Now, if you weren't a weaver, maybe you'd be something more, outdoorsy. Like a reeve, a kind of village manager, elected from the peasants and tasked with keeping everyone in line. Sounds powerful, right? Not really. The reeve gets the glorious job of making sure people show up to do their field work, pay their taxes, and don't steal each other's turnips. It's thankless, unpaid, and everyone hates him just a little. You're not jealous. Then there's the miller. He runs the mill, grinds the village's grain into flour, and, crucially, takes a generous scoop off the top as his fee. Millers are known for being slippery, a little too comfortable with creative accounting. There's even a saying, an honest miller has a thumb of gold. Meaning he presses the scales a bit in his favor. Sound familiar? Historians still argue whether millers really were universally disliked or just convenient scapegoats for hungry peasants. Either way, if you ever find yourself milling grain, prepare for lots of side-eye. You pause at the loom to stretch. Your back cracks like dry firewood. This is the real danger of medieval trades, repetition. Whether you're weaving, spinning, or hammering shoes, the endless, awkward motion ruins your body over time. There's no ergonomic chair, no brakes, and definitely no health insurance. Out the window, you see a group of coopers rolling barrels into the market square. Coopers make barrels, an absolutely essential trade. Everything from ale to salted fish is stored in barrels, and without them, food goes bad faster than you can say, festering eel. Which is also something you may be forced to eat one day. And don't forget the thatchers, those brave, nimble souls who climb up rickety roofs and layer bundles of straw like they're playing medieval Jenga. It looks fun until you remember that falling means broken bones, and broken bones often mean death. Because again, no hospitals. Just maybe a prayer, some honey, and a well-meaning pat on the head. A knock on your door startles you. It's Ellis, your neighbor. His goats come back, and she's chewed through one of your drying wool bundles. You sigh. Again with the goat. She's become a recurring problem, like a very hungry plot device. Ellis offers you a hunk of bread in apology. You take it. It's hard enough to cut glass, but beggars can't be choosers. Besides, it'll soak up the bitter ale later. You finish a few more rows on the loom before wrapping up. That cloth will be bartered at the next fair or maybe sent to the manor in partial payment for your rent. Because yes, you pay rent. In cloth, grain, or chickens. The Lord doesn't care what you give him, as long as he gets his due. You remember that time someone tried paying with beetles as a joke. The Lord didn't laugh. You walk outside for a break, stretching your sore shoulders. The carpenter is planing a new door across the lane, and the air smells like fresh-cut pine. A rare pleasure. He gives you a nod and grumbles about needing more nails. You both know the blacksmith hoards them like treasure. At the far end of the village, someone's busy tanning parchment, a brutal task that involves scraping animal skins until they're paper thin. You try not to think about what you're touching next time you read a prayer scroll. A boy races past carrying a basket of eggs, trips, and splatters half of them into the dirt. The cook is going to scream. He knows it. You know it. Everyone knows it. You slowly back away before you're recruited to help clean up. One quirky detail you overhear from an elder today: some say carrying a piece of coal in your pocket protects you from evil spirits while you work. You smile. Superstition is your side hustle. You've got rosemary in your belt, a charm under your pillow, and now maybe coal in your sock. Why not? Can't hurt. The sun is moving fast across the sky now. Your hands are raw, your back is angry, and your stomach is starting its usual late afternoon growl. But you've done your part. For now. Until the reeve comes knocking, or a sheep escapes, or someone accuses someone else of hexing their cabbage patch. Because in this world, work is never finished. There's always something broken, boiling, rotting, or escaping. And you? You're one of the poor souls holding it all together with blistered fingers and a surprisingly effective glare. You head home, brush the goat hairs off your tunic, and whisper a quick prayer that tonight's dinner isn't just turnips again. Spoiler, it's totally turnips again. Your home, or what passes for home, a sagging wooden frame stuffed with straw and held together by optimism and old nails. The door creaks as you nudge it open. Inside, the air is thick with the musty scent of damp wood, stale turnip, and something you'll charitably call goat essence. Because guess what? That goat has gotten in again. You shoo her out with a sigh. She looks offended, as if you're the one intruding. You secure the latch with a bit of frayed rope and lean against the wall, listening to the sounds of evening settling in. A dog barking. A pot clanking. Someone shouting at geese. A chorus of rural chaos that somehow feels like home. Now begins the strange lull between hard labor and bad sleep, medieval downtime, which, let's be clear, isn't relaxing. You're still cold, sore, and vaguely itchy in places you don't want to think about. But at least no one is shouting your name, and you're not actively bleeding. So that's something. You drop onto your bench, more a plank on barrels than a real chair, and poke at the hearth. It's mostly ash now, but you find a few embers glowing faintly and toss on some kindling. The fire sputters, coughs, then catches. The dancing light flickers across the room, illuminating your treasures: a three-legged stool, a wooden spoon with a crack down the center, and one very dented pewter bowl. Luxury. Dinner tonight is the same as yesterday. And the day before. A thin pottage, made from root vegetables, maybe a few dried peas if you're lucky, and a chunk of yesterday's bread softened into something almost edible. You stir it with the enthusiasm of a condemned man. It's a far cry from noble feasts. Forget turkey legs and goblets of wine, those are for lords, ladies, and Netflix specials. Your reality is a humble porridge that tastes like boiled regret. But here's the curious thing, despite the bland menu, mealtime is still sacred. You sit quietly, spooning mush into your mouth, watching the fire dance, letting the warmth, meager as it is, soothe your aching joints. For a few minutes, you're not toiling. You're just existing. Outside, you hear the distant clang of the manor bell. That means the Lord is about to eat. His meal, historians say, might include meat pies, spiced wine, stewed fruits, prepared by cooks with actual recipes. Whether he deserves any of it is a different story. But his table will be loud with gossip, slurping, and the occasional flatulence contest. Because yes, manners aren't exactly refined. Eating with fingers is common, and burping is just applause from your stomach. Meanwhile, you're chasing the last bit of pottage around your bowl with a piece of bark masquerading as bread. The fire crackles again, drawing your eyes. Fire is comfort, but it's also danger. A stray ember could burn down half the village. Thatched roofs and open flames are a risky combo. So you keep a watchful eye, nudging a charred log into place with your spoon. Multi-use tools. That's medieval ingenuity. You remember a tale told around last winter's fire, the story of a village burned down when someone fell asleep drunk with a torch in hand. Whether it's true or just a warning, it stayed with you. You now make a habit of blowing out every candle. All 2 of them. As the room warms a little, your mind drifts to entertainment. Not the streaming kind, though you do stare into the fire like it's Netflix. No, your options are simpler. Singing. Carving wood. Telling ghost stories about headless monks and women who turn into owls. One of your neighbors owns a rebec, a stringed instrument that sounds like a dying cat. But he plays it like he's serenading the stars. You admire the confidence, if not the pitch. On lucky nights, there's a mummers play, local folks dressing up and performing bizarre morality tales. Picture this, a man in a bear mask argues with death while a woman in a cabbage costume yells about sin. It's baffling, chaotic, and strangely comforting. Like medieval street theater meets fever dream. Tonight, there's no play. But you do hum a tune. One your mother sang while weaving. Something about a cow that kicks the moon. You don't remember the words, just the rhythm. It's enough. Historians still argue whether medieval people experienced boredom the way we do. Without screens or distractions, did they feel the ache of empty time? Or were they too exhausted to notice? You're not sure, but tonight, you feel it a little. That tug of stillness. Of wanting something more. Your fingers twitch. You reach for your only game, a small pouch of knuckle bones. Animal bones polished smooth, thrown like dice. You roll them idly, watching how they land. Some say they tell fortunes. You just like the sound they make. There's a knock at your door, soft, hesitant. It's your cousin, Agnes, clutching a small bundle. She enters without waiting for permission. That's family. She places a baked apple on your bench. A real treat. She'd swiped it from the manor kitchen where she works as a scullion. Risky move. You nod in solemn gratitude, and the 2 of you sit in silence, splitting the fruit like it's treasure. You exchange a few stories. Someone fell in the pig trough, the priest tripped over his robes, the Lord's new hunting dog is scared of chickens. The usual. Light gossip, passed like a warm blanket between you. Agnes finally yawns, ties her scarf tighter, and slips back into the night. You bolt the door and lean against it. The hearth's gone quiet. The embers glow gently, like sleepy eyes blinking shut. You roll into your bed, or rather, your straw-stuffed mattress, crawling with mystery. It crinkles under you. You adjust your rough wool blanket and try not to think about the lump near your feet. Could be a rock. Could be a turnip. Might be both. Before sleep, you say a prayer. Quietly, half mumbled. To no one in particular. Just words passed down like lullabies. A protection chant, a thank you, a whispered, please don't let the roof collapse. The goat bleats once outside. You sigh. Tomorrow you'll chase her again. And just like that, your eyes drift closed. Your body hums with aches, your stomach's mostly quiet, and your world shrinks to the warmth of one fire, one bed, and a roof that, tonight, doesn't leak. Sleep never comes easy when your blanket's itchy, your feet are numb, and someone in the next hovel snores like a dying ox. Still, you doze off eventually, only to be yanked awake by the pre-dawn clamor of a rooster who clearly doesn't understand the concept of personal space. His crows punch through the early fog like a bugle announcing your least favorite time of day, morning. You groan and sit up, straw clinging to your tunic and hair. Something small skitters away in the darkness. Rat? Beetle? Honestly, you've stopped checking. As long as it's not still in your bed, it's not your problem. Outside, the village is beginning to stir. Fires are being stoked back to life, children are whining about chores, and someone's already yelling about missing eggs. You step out into the damp chill and stretch, bones cracking like twigs. Another day begins, and once again, your entire existence is wrapped around survival. But this isn't a day like the others. Today, you're going into town. Now, don't get too excited. Town, in medieval terms, doesn't mean bustling skyscrapers or well-paved streets. It's more like a glorified village with twice the mud, 3 times the noise, and at least one mysterious smell that never quite goes away. Still, it has markets, more tradespeople, and, if you squint hard enough, a sense of possibility. You hitch a ride with a passing cart. The driver's name is Willem, and he's got breath like pickled fish and teeth like a crumbling castle. He talks non-stop about his prize pig, which he claims can count to 3. You nod politely and hold on tight as the cart bumps over the rutted road, each jolt threatening to launch you into the brambles. The town walls rise ahead like a crooked smile. They're meant to keep out trouble, bandits, invaders, the occasional runaway goose. But mostly they serve as a reminder, inside is money, status, and a little more danger than you're used to. You pass through the gate, nodding to a bored-looking guard picking dirt from under his fingernails. Inside, it's chaos. Merchants shouting, wheels clattering over cobblestones, a dog barking madly at a flock of geese who bark right back. The smell? Imagine wet wool, old onions, and something distinctly fermented. It clings to your nostrils like a bad memory. You're here to trade your woven cloth, painstakingly made over the past weeks, for essentials. Maybe some better shoes. Or salt. Or, if you're feeling decadent, a bit of smoked fish. You head toward the market square, dodging apprentices, a juggler with questionable aim, and one man vigorously arguing with a cabbage. The stalls are full of color, pots stacked like lopsided towers, bolts of imported fabric glinting in the sun, baskets of herbs, and endless variations of bread, round, flat, burnt, not burnt but will be soon. You lay your cloth on a trader's table and try to haggle. He squints at the weave, mutters about loose tension, and offers you a handful of dried beans and half a wheel of cheese with a suspicious bite taken out of it. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. That's negotiation. Eventually, you settle on a small bag of salt and a sturdy new belt. It's not much, but it'll do. As you move through the crowd, a group of friars sings on a street corner. Their robes are patched, their voices a little off-key, but the crowd tosses coins into their bowl anyway. Some for charity. Some to stop the singing. You pass a tavern spilling rowdy patrons onto the street. A man is dancing with a chicken. A woman is laughing so hard she drops her ale. Somewhere above, someone throws a bucket of something very unpleasant out a window, and it lands this close to your feet. You decide to walk closer to the buildings after that. Just in case. You pause near a stall selling charms and trinkets. A tooth said to ward off illness. A bone whistle that calls friendly spirits. A small pouch of crushed herbs tied with red string, protection from curses. You buy one. Not because you believe it'll work, but because everyone else does, and peer pressure is eternal. Historians still argue whether medieval markets were genuinely dangerous or just rowdy by modern standards. Pickpockets were definitely real, and fights could break out over bad bread or crooked scales. You keep your hand on your pouch and your eyes on the exits. You stop to watch a public proclamation being read by the town crier. He shouts about taxes, a new curfew, and a runaway donkey wanted for aggravated grazing. The crowd grumbles but listens. This is how news travels, loud, slow, and covered in spittle. In the town square, a pillory stands as a grim centerpiece. Today, it's empty, but yesterday it held a man who stole a pie. They say he got pelted with spoiled cabbage and 2 live eels. Justice is unique here. Quirky fact of the day. Some towns used animals in trials. Real animals. Pigs, goats, even insects. If a pig killed someone, it might be tried, found guilty, and hanged. You try not to picture it. But your brain does it anyway. You stop at the town well to drink, the water tasting faintly of moss and metal. A group of washerwomen chat nearby, slapping wet linens on stones with alarming vigor. One of them eyes you and says you look like you haven't bathed in a month. She's right. You laugh nervously and move on. Before heading back, you slip into the church. Not out of piety, but for the silence. The air is cool, the stone walls thick and ancient. Candles flicker like tiny golden spirits. You sit for a moment, letting the quiet wrap around you. Whether you believe in the saints or not, it feels like a pause, like the world exhales and holds its breath. A monk passes, nods, and goes about dusting a reliquary said to hold a saint's toe. You don't ask which one. The sun is starting to dip now. Time to return. You meet Willem and his counting pig back at the gate. He's humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like, row, row, row your boat, but off by a century or two. The ride home is quiet. Tired. Peaceful in that way exhaustion sometimes is. You arrive back at your village just as the light fades. People are tending fires, calling children inside, muttering about how cold the wind feels tonight. You slip into your home, salt and belt tucked away safely. Another day survived. Barely. You wake to rain. Not the gentle kind that whispers across rooftops and invites lazy mornings, but the insistent, bone-deep sort that finds every crack in your roof and turns dirt paths into rivers. You sigh and blink away sleep, watching a single fat droplet work its way down a ceiling beam before landing, with expert precision, on your forehead. Good morning to you, too. Your thatch roof, made of reeds and prayers, isn't holding up its end of the bargain. You drag a bucket under the leak, already half full from other drips. The floor's damp, your feet are colder than usual, and the whole house smells like wet wool. So basically, business as usual. You pull on yesterday's tunic, because what even is a fresh outfit, and push outside into the gray morning. The world is slick and steaming, smoke curling from chimneys and mingling with the fog. Someone's chicken is flapping angrily in a puddle. Children splash barefoot, shrieking with a kind of joy only possible before your knees start hurting permanently. Today's work? That would be building maintenance. When you live in a house made of sticks, mud, and stubbornness, upkeep is part of daily life. Your walls are wattle and daub, a fancy phrase for woven wood smeared with mud and straw. It's decent insulation and keeps out most weather. Most. But storms like this? They test your craftsmanship and your patience. You grab a ladder that looks like it was last inspected by fate and climb onto the roof, balancing like a medieval cat burglar, only with less gold and more mold. You begin the wet, thankless job of patching leaks with handfuls of fresh straw and clay, jamming them into gaps with fingers gone numb from cold. Down below, Agnes is shouting helpful advice like, "Try not to fall," and "That bit looks like it's about to go." "Thank you, cousin. Extremely useful." As you work, you glance over the village, rooftops shining with rain, plumes of smoke twisting into the clouds, a muddy cart stuck halfway across the road while its owner curses at the wheels. The scent of wet earth and smoke lingers in the air. It's oddly peaceful. If you ignore the cramp forming in your leg. Maintenance isn't limited to roofs, either. There's your tools, your shoes, the fence that keeps goats in, or tries to. You fix a splintered handle on your hoe using twine and a nail repurposed from a broken cart. Reuse is your middle name. Waste not, want not. Want less, waste even less. Historians still argue whether peasants owned their homes outright or merely rented from their lords. In your case, it's technically your house, but you owe labor and goods in exchange for staying there. Miss your dues, and the roof over your head becomes very temporary. As mid-morning arrives, so does the thatcher, old Marek, a man who smells like marshes and always has twigs in his beard. He's here to rethatch a neighbor's roof, and you watch him work for a while, admiring his speed and the way he talks to the straw like it's an old friend. It's oddly soothing. Or maybe that's just your brain slowly shutting down from exhaustion. He nods at you and mutters, "Better to thatch in spring, but the rain doesn't care about calendars." You agree, even though you have absolutely no choice in the matter. You spend the afternoon hauling fresh daub from the communal pit. It's a revolting mix of mud, straw, animal hair, and sometimes, urine. For binding. Yes, really. You don't ask whose. You just slap it on your wall with the enthusiasm of someone pretending not to care. A group of children nearby is playing Daub Monster, covering each other in the same mixture and growling. It's revolting. It's also adorable. You stop for a quick lunch, some leftover bread, now so hard it could double as a blunt weapon, and a smear of goose fat if you're lucky. A neighbor offers you a sip of ale. It's warm, flat, and somehow still better than water. Speaking of water, remember that well you passed in town? You don't have one here. Your village relies on a nearby stream, which today is more like a chocolate-colored torrent. You make a mental note to fill extra barrels when it calms down. The rain slows in the late afternoon. You take advantage of the break to check your animal shelter, a ramshackle lean-to held up by sheer will. The goat looks smug, the chickens offended, and one of your neighbor's pigs is hiding under your workbench. Again. You sigh and throw down more straw. Maintenance also means sweeping the mud back out of your house, fixing the broken latch on your door, and chasing mice away from the grain sack. You've developed a system, loud stomping and increasingly creative threats. Doesn't work, but it makes you feel better. Quirky fact of the day, some people used to mix crushed eggshells or human hair into daub to make it stronger. Whether that's superstition or medieval science, you're not sure. But your cousin swears by chicken bones. Your wall smells faintly of soup. As evening creeps in, the rain returns, lighter now, more of a drizzle than a deluge. You light a candle, its tiny flame flickering wildly as you shelter it with your hand. You warm your fingers by the hearth, which, miracle of miracles, is still mostly dry. You sit back on your bench, watching the fire dance, and listen to the rain tapping the roof. For all its leaks and cracks, your little hut is holding up. Not perfectly, but enough. Historians still argue how much autonomy peasants had in home repairs. Some lords provided materials, others expected tenants to do everything on their own dime, assuming they had one. You've never seen a dime. You once saw a farthing, and someone tried to bite it to check if it was real. Your body aches from the day's labor. Your hands are caked with mud, and your back is singing a dirge. But there's a small pride in knowing you kept the rain out. For now. You take one last look at the patched walls, the repaired tools, and the bucket of cleanish water you lugged in earlier. The storm outside rumbles faintly, but you're safe, sheltered, and only mildly damp. Which, all things considered, is a win. You settle into your pile of straw, drape your blanket over yourself, and let the sound of rain lull you to sleep, each drop a tiny lullaby tapping against the earth. The smell hits you before you even open your eyes: smoke, boiling fat, and something deeply, barnyard. You blink awake to see a pot bubbling over the hearth, a thick, greasy stew that's either breakfast or some kind of alchemical mistake. Agnes stirs it with a stick, not a spoon, and hums tunelessly. You sit up, already dreading what's coming next. It's your turn at the communal oven. In most medieval villages, not everyone gets their own fireplace capable of baking. Hearths are for stews and heating, not crusty loaves. So baking day means heading to the village's shared oven, along with everyone else who's hoping for bread instead of soggy porridge. You bundle your dough, lumpy, sour, stubborn, and set off down the dirt path. The communal oven stands like a squat stone beast, squinting smoke into the sky. It's hot already, radiating heat and a very particular scent of charred crust. A small line of villagers is already forming, arms full of dough wrapped in cloths or balanced in baskets. Everyone's got opinions. As you wait your turn, you listen to the usual drama. Mary claims she saw a face in her last loaf. Peter insists the oven is cursed. Agnes once tried to bake a pie in it and set her sleeve on fire. You inch forward slowly, clutching your dough like a newborn. Finally, it's your moment. The oven master, a grizzled man with no eyebrows and soot permanently embedded in his pores, grunts in approval at your dough's consistency. A miracle. He slides it in with a long wooden paddle, muttering something about, not another burnt bottom situation. You've got a bit of time to kill while it bakes, so you visit the blacksmith. His forge is a roaring beast in its own right, glowing red and spitting sparks. He's shaping a horseshoe, each strike ringing through the air like a church bell made of fury. You need a new latch for your door, and possibly some reinforcement on your tools. He agrees, for a fee, of course. Nothing's free, not even in this mud-caked paradise. Historians still argue whether medieval rural tradespeople were part of the peasantry or a tier above. In your experience, they seem richer, grumpier, and slightly better fed. He even has a cat. A plump one. Named Mouse, ironically. Your bread is ready. It's edible. Crisp on the outside, vaguely chewy on the inside, and you didn't even set anything on fire. A success, by medieval standards. With bread in hand, you return to your dwelling and start preparing for the next, even more daunting task, making clothing. In the absence of Zara, H&M, or literally any convenience, clothes are DIY. Your tunic has more patches than original fabric. That's why Agnes has been spinning thread all morning, muttering under her breath like a wizard summoning fiber from thin air. She's using a drop spindle, a deceptively simple tool that looks like a stick with a whirl, and drawing out sheep's wool into long, consistent fibers. It's mesmerizing, in a repetitive, low-stakes way. You give it a try. Your thread looks like it fought a bear and lost. Once there's enough spun yarn, it's time to weave. The loom takes up half the house and creaks ominously with every beat. The process is slow, mechanical, and full of mistakes. One wrong pull, and suddenly you've got a tunic with a diagonal sleeve. You work on a few rows, trying to remember the rhythm. Over, under, beat. Over, under, beat. It's not glamorous, but there's a strange peace in it. Your fingers fall into motion, your mind wanders, and the outside world fades. Quirky fact of the day. Some medieval folks believed red clothes could protect you from evil spirits. Agnes once wore an entire red outfit during a thunderstorm and insisted it's why the lightning missed your cottage. Eventually, your cloth is ready, crude, itchy, and guaranteed to shrink if you even think about moisture. You cut and stitch a new undershirt, more or less symmetrical. The needle pricks your thumb multiple times, each tiny jab reminding you why tailors eventually became respected professionals. Meanwhile, another neighbor is tanning hides. That's right, someone has to turn animal skins into usable leather, and the process is revolting. You catch a whiff of the tanning pit from across the path. Imagine a soup of urine, lime, and decaying flesh, and you're halfway there. But leather's useful. Belts, shoes, pouches, anything that needs to withstand weather and wear. Your current shoes are one damp morning away from dissolving into compost. You spend part of your afternoon patching them with a scrap of pigskin. The awl slips and you yelp. You add it to the growing list of minor injuries you no longer bother complaining about. Historians still debate how often peasants actually got new clothing. Some say once a year, others argue it was even less. You believe it. Every garment you own is worn, repaired, and held together by hope and thread. By now, the sun's begun its slow descent. You stow your finished bread in a sack, hang your new tunic near the hearth to finish drying, and rub your aching back. The whole day was labor. There's no other way to describe it. And yet, you survived. Again. As the village quiets, you sit outside on the worn log by your doorway. The sky burns orange and purple, clouds streaked like brushstrokes. A child runs by, barefoot and giggling, dragging a stick through the mud like it's Excalibur. Somewhere, someone sings off-key, and the sound drifts lazily on the wind. You tear a piece from your still warm bread. It's dense, chewy, and a little smoky. You share it with Agnes, who nods in approval, and Mouse the blacksmith's cat, who has mysteriously appeared with beggar's eyes. This is your life. Baking, mending, weaving, stitching, fixing. It's relentless and humbling. But there's also rhythm to it. A texture. A kind of satisfaction that comes from knowing you made something, however crude, however simple. You lean back, legs stretched out, your body heavy and worn. You close your eyes just for a second, listening to the crackle of the fire and the hum of nighttime insects waking up. You made it through baking day. No burns, no mold, no stolen loaves. You'll call that a win. Morning again. Your eyes flutter open to the clatter of hooves and wheels. Someone's cart is rattling down the lane, full of sloshing milk pails and squawking chickens. You stretch on your straw mat, every joint protesting like it's unionized. But there's no sleeping in today, you're due in the Lord's fields. Again. You trudge to the edge of the village, where the open land begins. You don't own this land. Most people around here don't. It belongs to the local lord, who graciously allows you to live on it in exchange for regular labor, corvée, as it's called. Basically, it's rent, in the form of sweat and spinal compression. You arrive at the manor fields along with a dozen other villagers. The fields are long, wide strips of plowed earth, carved like brown ribs into the landscape. A steward with a sour face and an enviably dry cloak barks orders while leaning on a polished stick. You nod, smile faintly, and begin the day's work. Today's task, weeding and replanting. The weeds are fierce and abundant, like they've been plotting since last harvest. Your hands sink into the mud, pulling and yanking, sometimes appending suspiciously fat worms and once, a very offended toad. You apologize. He does not forgive. Nearby, Agnes is trying to coax a stubborn ox into turning a plow. The ox has opinions. None of them helpful. The plow creaks and skips, snagging on hidden roots. Still, row by row, the land is turned and tended, fed with more labor than most people would think possible. There's no lunch break, per se. Just a moment to chew on some cold porridge scooped into a cloth, chased with warm ale or well water, if you're brave and up to date on intestinal fortitude. Someone passes around dried apples. Someone else offers a hunk of cheese so aged it might qualify for a pension. You wipe your brow. The sun's climbing now, a hot, slow boil in the sky. You're wearing a wool tunic because you always wear wool, because linen is fancy and your only linen shirt is reserved for festivals, funerals, and pretending life isn't damp and itchy. The sweat pools in your lower back and trickles down your spine. Delightful. Historians still, you wouldn't mind paying in goods, but when your entire wealth consists of a goat, 2 eggs, and a dented wooden bowl, the labor option is unfortunately your most abundant currency. The steward returns to check progress. He grunts and makes a mark on his wax tablet. You'd love to know what he's writing. Probably something like, peasant number 7, adequate grumbling, below average hoe technique. The work continues. You spot a hawk circling overhead. Some say it's a sign of good luck. Others say it just means your chickens better start hiding. Either way, you pause a moment to appreciate its effortless flight. Compared to your own 2 aching legs, the hawk is basically a noble aristocrat. The afternoon drags. You hum to yourself. Agnes begins singing something about a fox in the henhouse. A couple villagers join in. You make up verses as you go. It turns into a ridiculous ballad involving a fox who pays rent and demands an omelette. Suddenly, there's a commotion near the tree line. One of the oxen bolts, dragging its plow sideways into a small ditch. The animal kicks, the harness snaps, and someone ends up face down in a puddle. Miraculously, it's not you. Everyone's laughing, even the steward, who manages a rare and terrifying smile. As the sun begins to dip lower, the call finally comes, enough. You stretch, slow, deliberate, and painful. Mud streaks your legs, dirt clings to your fingernails, and you're fairly certain there's a beetle in your left boot. You head back to the village with the others, dragging your tools and aching feet, trading jokes that barely rise above exhausted mumbling. Quirky fact of the day. Some medieval villagers believed singing to crops helped them grow. One man in a neighboring village apparently tried to serenade his wheat every morning. He was eventually asked to sing quieter. Back home, you drop your tools, collapse on the stool, and try to massage life back into your hands. Agnes hands you a small cloth pouch. Inside, miracle of miracles, is a tiny bit of honeycomb. Someone traded it for extra eggs. You break it into sticky pieces and let the sweetness coat your tongue. For a moment, it erases the taste of dirt and sweat. Dinner is the usual. Stew with a side of, don't ask what's in it. You eat slowly, your body finally catching up to the ache that's been building all day. The fire crackles, casting flickering shadows on the daub walls. The air smells like wood smoke, wet wool, and distant manure. You think about how much of your time is spent working for someone else. But then again, that's the norm. Always has been. There's safety in numbers, even if those numbers mostly come with pitchforks. Others, you imagine what it might be like to own your own land, to wake up and choose your work, to harvest food for your own table first. You stoke the fire and settle in for the night. Your bones ache, but your stomach is full. Your bread hasn't gone moldy yet. And the roof, patched with your own hands, is still holding off the sky. Not bad, for a peasant. You close your eyes. Just for a minute. Tomorrow brings more fields. But for now, sleep. The morning air smells sharper today, crisper, edged with frost that bites the toes if you dare step outside without socks. You're already dressed in layers of wool and linen, fumbling with buttons and toggles that never quite fit the way they should. Your breath hangs in the air, tiny clouds you chase as you trudge toward the village well. Water. The lifeblood of your world, and a daily scavenger hunt. The well is more a hole in the ground with a bucket tied to a rope, surrounded by worn stones and the chatter of villagers. You join the line, watching the sun crest over the hills, painting the sky in soft pinks and blues. You lower your bucket with a thunk, feeling the cold snap of water against the wood, and haul it up. The bucket feels heavier every day, and your arms are already sore from yesterday's fieldwork. But this water will wash your clothes, quench your thirst, and keep your hearth fire going. Nearby, a child is filling a tiny wooden cup, trying not to spill a drop. You smile, a rare softness amid the daily grind. Today, you have another chore waiting, caring for the animals. Your small flock of chickens is both a blessing and a headache. The hens cluck, scratching at the dirt, while a particularly bold rooster struts like he owns the village. You've seen sharper attitudes in nobles, and none of them carry claws. Feeding them means gathering scraps and grains saved from your meager stores. You toss handfuls of corn and barley, watching the frenzy of feathers and beaks. One chicken, whom you've affectionately named Scraps, pecks at your boot, demanding more attention. You relent. Everyone deserves a little affection. The smell of the barnyard is robust, a mixture of hay, manure, and something faintly sweet from fresh straw. You clean the coop carefully, sweeping away yesterday's mess and adding fresh bedding. It's a thankless job but necessary, especially to keep diseases at bay. Remember that plague? Historians still argue how much poor sanitation contributed to its rapid spread. You don't want to find out firsthand. Speaking of hygiene, your morning includes a quick dip in the nearby stream. The water's cold enough to make you gasp, but it's refreshing and wakes you up better than any ale. You splash water on your face and neck, scrubbing the grime off your hands. You notice a few fish darting beneath the surface, shiny, slippery flashes of life in the gray water. You make a mental note to catch one for dinner sometime, if only you had the patience for fishing. By midday, you're back inside your humble home, working on a new project, candle making. Candles are precious, expensive, and essential when night falls early and darkness creeps in like an uninvited guest. Your village gets its candles from tallow, rendered animal fat, which smells like a combination of old socks and regret. But it's better than fumbling in the dark. You carefully melt the tallow in a pot over the fire, stirring with a wooden spoon as it liquefies. Nearby, you dip twisted wicks, made from flax or cotton, into the warm fat, letting them harden on a rack. Each candle takes several dips to build enough layers to burn through the night. Quirky fact, some people believe that placing garlic in windows alongside candles warded off evil spirits. You've never tried it, but the idea of garlic-scented candles isn't entirely unpleasant. As the afternoon shadows lengthen, you hear the distant tolling of the village bell. It's the call to prayer or, more accurately, a signal that the Lord Steward will be visiting soon to collect your share of this season's crops and goods. Taxes are the bane of every peasant's existence. You wonder, again, whether your hard work ever truly benefits you. Historians still debate how much tax burden peasants realistically bore, and whether the system was sustainable in the long run. Your thoughts? It feels like a constant squeeze, like trying to hold water in your hands. You take a break, sitting on the doorstep, watching the light fade and the village come alive with evening chores. A neighbor is pounding grain with a pestle and mortar, the rhythmic thump echoing softly. Children chase each other through the mud, laughter bubbling up despite the day's hardships. You look around and realize that despite all the struggles, this patchwork community is your world, fractured and flawed but familiar and oddly comforting. Night creeps in, bringing the promise of sleep, quiet, and a brief escape from the relentless routine. You blow out your newly made candle, watching the smoke curl upward, disappearing into the dark. You curl into your straw bed, pulling your threadbare blanket close. The cold nips at your nose, but your heart feels a little warmer. Tomorrow will bring more work, more challenges. But for now, you close your eyes and rest. Dawn breaks, pale and hesitant, brushing the village rooftops with soft light that barely warms your stiff limbs. You rise, already feeling the weight of another long day pressing down like the wooden yoke you'll soon wear, not around your neck, but on your shoulders in spirit. Today's task isn't the fields or the oven, but something more delicate, yet just as vital, preserving food for the coming winter. You step outside, where the air smells faintly of smoke and earth, with a hint of something sour. It's the unmistakable scent of sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, bubbling gently in a crock by Agnes's doorstep. You watch as she stirs it with practiced hands, chatting about the importance of preserving food in a world where fresh produce disappears with the first frost. You're assigned the job of making salt pork, a key staple to get you through the harsh months when meat is scarce. The process is simple but laborious, curing thick cuts of pork belly in salt, packing them into wooden barrels, and letting them rest in the cool cellar. As you rub salt into the meat, your fingers tingle from the coarse crystals, and you marvel at the ingenuity. Without refrigerators or supermarkets, every morsel must be carefully preserved to avoid waste. It's a skill born out of necessity, and you can't help but appreciate the wisdom passed down through generations. Nearby, a group of women is drying herbs and flowers, threading bundles to hang over their hearths. Some swear these bundles keep away illnesses or attract good fortune. You're skeptical, but you admire their determination and hope. Historians still argue how widespread fermentation really was in medieval Europe. Some evidence suggests it was common, especially in northern regions, while others believe simpler preservation methods like salting and smoking dominated. You decide that, either way, your survival depends on mastering at least one of them. After several hours, your hands ache, coated in a salty residue, but the barrels are full. You lift the heavy wooden lids, inhaling the sharp, tangy scent of preserved meat, a smell that promises survival when snow covers the land and hunger bites deeper than any blade. You pause, reflecting on how much of your time is dedicated to preparing for the unknown. Life here is a constant balancing act between today's toil and tomorrow's uncertainty. Later, you're called to assist with repairing the village fence, a patchwork of wooden stakes, thorn branches, and rope, meant to keep out wolves and marauders. As you hammer nails and weave new branches, you can't help but notice how fragile this barrier feels. One strong wind, or one hungry wolf, and the entire village could be exposed. It's a reminder that security is always temporary, a hard lesson for a peasant. You've heard tales of raids, of burned homes and stolen livestock. It's enough to keep you vigilant, even on the coldest nights. As evening falls, you help Agnes hang your salted pork near the hearth to smoke gently. The fire's aroma fills the room, mingling with the earthy scent of dried herbs. It's a small comfort, a sign that you've done something right today. You sit quietly, fingers twitching with fatigue, eyes heavy but restless. Outside, the wind howls softly, promising another cold night. You pull your threadbare cloak tighter, grateful for the warmth, and drift into dreams where food is plentiful and fences never fall. You wake to the sharp clang of the village bell, no gentle sunrise this morning, just the hard reality of another day demanding your labor. Today isn't about planting or harvesting, it's about barter and trade at the weekly market. The market is the village's chaotic heart, a place where peasants, merchants, and travelers converge, each carrying goods, gossip, and sometimes secrets. Your boots squish in the muddy lane as you make your way toward the bustling square. The air is thick with the scent of leather, smoked fish, and a hint of exotic spices, probably from a traveling trader, whose goods are both fascinating and frighteningly expensive. You clutch a small basket containing eggs, a few apples, and a chunk of that salty pork you helped cure. These are your currency today. Around you, the market buzzes. Merchants shout their wares, bolts of coarse cloth, iron tools, pottery glazed in dull greens and browns, and sometimes the rare treat of honey or dried fruit. You weave through the crowd, trying not to spill your precious eggs. A group of children dart past, giggling and playing, momentarily lightening the otherwise serious mood. You barter with the blacksmith, trading an egg and a piece of pork for a small iron hook, essential for hanging your pots over the fire. The blacksmith grunts, eyes wary, but eventually nods. Bargaining is an art here, a dance between necessity and pride. Quirky tidbit, some market vendors believed wearing a sprig of rosemary would bring luck and better sales. You give it a half-hearted try, but mostly feel silly. The market isn't just for goods, it's the village's social hub. You overhear whispers about the upcoming festival, rumors of a wandering minstrel, and debates about the best way to survive the long winter. Historians still argue how much medieval markets were regulated versus informal gatherings. From where you stand, it feels like a little of both, controlled chaos. After securing your trade, you stop by the apothecary's stall. The old woman behind the table sells herbs, salves, and mysterious potions. She offers you a small vial of wormwood tincture for a pittance, promising it helps with digestion and warding off evil spirits. You're tempted but skeptical. The day wears on, and you help haul your purchases home. The sun is high, warm but not forgiving. Your hands ache from carrying goods and counting coins. You wonder if all this effort is worth it, but realize the market's more than survival, it's connection, hope, and a brief break from the endless grind. As you return to your cottage, the distant sound of church bells reminds you of the coming evening prayers. You pause, watching a flock of birds spiral into the sky, feeling the bittersweet pull of community and solitude. You settle in for the evening, tired but content with the day's small victories. The market may be muddy and noisy, but it's alive, a reminder that even in hard times, life moves forward. The dawn light leaks through the cracks in your rough wooden shutters, casting thin stripes across your face. Today's different. Today, you face a rare opportunity, attending the village court. Not a fancy royal tribunal, mind you, but the local justice gathering where disputes get hashed out and the Lord Steward plays judge. You lace your boots, adjust your woolen cloak, and set off toward the manor house. The path is slippery from overnight rain, and you slip more than once, cursing softly under your breath. But today's chores pause, you've got a role to play. Villagers are already gathering in the courtyard, murmuring among themselves. Some look hopeful, others weary. The steward stands under a large oak, parchment in hand, ready to announce the day's cases. Your case. A dispute over a boundary fence with your neighbor, Agnes's cousin, who claims your chickens have been trespassing and ruining her garden. The steward's voice booms, formal and impatient, as he calls witnesses and listens to complaints. You step forward, explaining calmly how your hens only peck where the fence is broken, a fact you promise to fix as soon as possible. Agnes stands beside you, nodding in support. The judgment comes down, you must repair the fence within a week and pay a small fine in grain. It's not a victory, but it's fair. You accept it, knowing this court system keeps the fragile peace, however imperfectly. Quirky tidbit, in some villages, disputes were settled by bizarre methods, like a duel with wooden spoons or a contest to catch the most frogs. You're relieved your court sticks to words and fines. The court session moves on to other cases, accusations of theft, complaints about late payments, even a strangely emotional argument over who gets to use the communal well first. It's a messy but vital part of village life. Historians still argue how much power these local courts truly held, especially versus the Lord's own authority. To you, the court is both protector and tormentor, an institution that maintains order but reminds you daily of your limited freedom. After the session, you walk home thoughtfully, mulling over how law, tradition, and community intertwine here. Justice isn't perfect, but it's something everyone relies on, fragile as a spider's web. Back at your cottage, you start mending the fence, hammering stakes into muddy ground and weaving new branches. The chickens watch curiously, as if they understand the stakes, literally. By evening, your hands are blistered, but the fence stands stronger. You hope this will keep your feathery friends on the right side of the law, at least for a little while. As night falls, you lie in your bed of straw, the sounds of the village quieting around you. The tension of the day fades, replaced by the familiar rhythm of life, the endless cycle of work, dispute, and survival. You close your eyes, the faint echo of the steward's voice lingering as sleep pulls you under. A low, gray sky hangs over the village as you rise, the threat of rain making the earth soggy and heavy beneath your boots. Today's task feels daunting. You've been called to assist with the harvest of the local grain fields, a task that demands sweat, patience, and a bit of luck with the weather. You grab your sickle, a curved blade with a wooden handle, sharpened enough to slice through stalks of wheat or barley with practiced ease. The field stretches out before you, a sea of golden heads swaying faintly in the breeze. The air smells sweet, mingled with damp soil and the faintest hint of wildflowers. You crouch, swinging your sickle in rhythmic arcs, cutting bundles of stalks and tying them with coarse twine. Your muscles ache quickly, a reminder that this is no leisurely stroll but backbreaking work. Nearby, you hear the calls of other villagers, some laughing despite the hardship. Children chase after a stray dog, and a few elders sit under a tree, sharing stories and passing around a flask of watered-down ale. Quirky fact, some medieval harvesters wore brightly colored ribbons tied to their belts or hats, believed to encourage a good yield and scare off evil spirits. You smile, imagining your plain brown tunic adorned with such flair. The harvest is vital, not just for your own survival, but for the entire village. A bad harvest could mean hunger, disease, and hardship that lingers long after the last stalk is cut. Historians still argue whether medieval farming techniques were efficient enough to support growing populations or if famine was an inevitable cycle. By midday, clouds gather and the first drops of rain fall, soft at first, then heavier. You hasten to gather the remaining bundles, knowing that wet grain can rot quickly. The mud thickens, and your boots sink, making every step a struggle. Despite the challenges, there's a strange camaraderie among the harvesters. Shared grumbles about the weather, swapped tips on cutting technique, and a collective hope that this year's yield will be enough. Back at the village, the grain is stored in large wooden bins, carefully protected from moisture and pests. You help haul bundles inside, the scent of fresh grain filling the air, a mixture of earthiness and faint sweetness. As evening approaches, a quiet descends over the village. You sit by the hearth, hands tired and body sore but heart a little lighter. The work is never done, but moments like these, surrounded by community and the fruits of your labor, remind you why you endure. You fall asleep to the gentle patter of rain on the roof, the world outside washing clean, ready to begin again tomorrow.